Hey, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Sandman and Pile Show. Uh, right up there is Sandman. I'm Pile, and we have a special guest today, Austin Maness. Did I pronounce that right, sir?
Yep, that's it.
All right. Well, we'll get right down to brass tacks. Um, we started this podcast because we wanted to talk to fellow warriors, people that served. We want to help out our communities. We want to help out our veterans. We want to help out all these people by this podcast, and hopefully, we have some big things coming. Some big sponsors. Henry, you got some sponsors you want to shout out to?
Same sponsors are last week. J&H, Custom Painting. Again, they came through. They gave us a little tour of their facilities this week. Actually, went to meet with the owner. So,
Okay.
pretty cool facility they have. And shout out to ONC Miss Carmen over there. I believe they're doing her thing. So, appreciate his support and keep it up. Keep it supporting. This is a good cause, and hopefully we get to a point where we can have more sponsors
Yeah,
and keep this going.
that's great. And I want to shout out to Semperfi Design, who is going to be our new social media guys out of South Carolina. Um, we've got to pay for a little bit of, but it should be working by September 8th with a website, with donations, with all kinds of stuff. So it's going to be good. Um, Without further ado, I want to introduce you to Austin Maness. He is going to be talking about his service, and then even better, he's going to be talking about the Battle of Ramadi Reunion coming up in January. And Henry just left. Damn it! I'm gonna have to edit that out. Um, here he is, and he's back. Henry, you disappeared. It's okay.
Yeah. Sorry,
Um,
guys.
but Austin, can you introduce yourself to the world? Who are
Sure.
you, sir?
Sure. So, Austin Maness grew up in Georgia and found myself looking for a way to, be of service in some capacity, and decided to head out here to Texas. I went to Texas A&M for my undergrad and commissioned right into
Go
the
Aggies.
Army. Yeah. And to
Right
the
on.
chagrin of some of my uncles that were Marine Corps veterans from the Vietnam era, they gave me a lot of grief about why are you going into the Army instead of the Marine Corps? And I said, well, it's who has the dollars to pay for my, college festivities. So, commissioned years later, right as the war in Iraq was kicking off. War in Afghanistan had started, and I still had a few classes left to finish. But commissioned, went straight to artillery school in Fort Sill, Oklahoma,
Oof.
and within a couple months, found myself joining a unit in the First Armored Division that was already deployed to Iraq in 03, 04. And so I got a little taste of deployment, about 5 months or so of the kind of the tail end of that deployment. And then basically, more deployments, as you guys remember those days.
Back to back
Another
to
deployment
back.
to Iraq, a deployment to Afghanistan, and then finally left the service in 2013, and then tried to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so dabbled in a few things, some contracting work with the State Department after the service, and then grad school to try again, find out what I want to be when I grew up, and then moved back to Texas in 2016. And a buddy and I, a Navy veteran, actually, he and I started up a company, and I've been here in North Texas ever since. So that's kind of where we are today. And then it just so happened to, as you mentioned, to stay connected with guys from those deployments. And all of a sudden, it's 20 years after the Battle of Ramadi, and the gentleman that was our brigade commander at the time had the idea of, like, let's put a reunion together. And so I was all in. I was like, man, how do I become a part of this? And so we're in it. We're planning it. We're getting monies just coming from donors, and people are signing up, and so we're just trying to get the word out to get some more folks there.
how do people sign up for this, and where do they find it?
So we try to build as many avenues as we could. We've got a Facebook page, we've got an Instagram page, we've got a website. And when you're on the website, there's like an Eventbrite link that you can go and sign up. And obviously, we wanted to keep the cost as minimal as possible to the service members and their families. And so it's just like a small. It's $25 a person, or you can bring a family for $50. As many family members, just $50 for the whole family. And if you're a Gold Star family member, then you're obviously invited at no cost to attend. And so that's how people sign up. And then, of course, the big crux is getting over is your travel cost, and we're trying to figure out how to minimize as much cost as possible to folks that are traveling all the way to El Paso, Texas, which is not it's not a major hub of an airport by any means. So we're trying to help people get there.
No, not at all. I mean, I thought about driving, and I saw 2,200 miles. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Fuck no, I am not driving 2,200 miles.
It's a long trip.
Oof.
It's a long trip, man.
Yes, and
I get on the plane for that.
Texas. I'm here in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I could probably get to Nashville faster than I could get to El Paso. And so I'll probably drive and then put the wife on a hopper so she doesn't have to listen to my radio jams the whole way.
So so you're basically in charge of this reunion, correct?
Well, the way it went down is I heard Lieutenant General retired McFarland, who at the time of the Battle of Ramadi was Colonel McFarland. I heard him on a podcast with Jocko Willink, and I was just listening to his podcast, and Sean McFarland and I have crossed paths many times over the years. My first meeting obviously was in Ramadi, where I was working in his headquarters company there at the brigade. A few years later, he somehow was connected to the Defense Language Institute, where I was attending as a student learning a language for the Army. And then years later, I'm in Afghanistan, and he's somewhere in my chain of command as a 2-star general. And then as I left the service and started working on the Syrian-Turkish border with the State Department, he was the 3-star in charge of fighting ISIS in Iraq. And so we've just been crossing paths in so many weird ways. And so when I saw him on this podcast, of course, I just texted him and reached out and said, "Hey, sir, I heard you mention this reunion thing, and I'm one of those geeky people that like to plan things and see them executed and done well." And I said, "How can I be of service?" And he responded pretty quickly and said, "Congratulations, you're in charge of the planning committee." I'm like, wait a minute. What am I getting into? So, but it's been great. And he's just reconnected me with so many people I didn't even know that we probably, sat in the same chow hall in Ramadi, but now I'm working with them for this reunion, whether they were Air Force, Navy, Marines. And now we've got a little committee going, trying to get this thing together. And so I would not say that I'm in charge, but I would say that, I send a lot of emails out, and I try to wrangle the cats as much as possible.
Wrangling cats is hard. Man, yeah, that just reminds me of Reverend Warriors and doing my hike in Nashville. That was just nothing but wrangling cats.
Yep.
It was terrible. So, hey, good job. I hope to see Jocko there.
As far as I know, yeah, he's planning to show up, and he's been very great, helpful. He obviously has a pretty good following with his product and his podcasts and his social medias, and so he puts a spot out or a word out, and we see a flurry of activity of people finding out, hey, what's this about? I really want to go, and so we really appreciate his support.
He's fantastic. I haven't met him yet. I know one of his platoon commanders. He was in Ramadi with us. He was one of his platoon commanders, and I went to high school with this kid, and hopefully he's coming to it too, because he lives in San Diego, and I guess San Diego is a lot closer than Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
It's probably pretty close to the same distance, maybe a little bit closer, yeah.
Man.
You guys normally do this in Texas, or you guys travel to different states?
So this one specifically is like a one out of one. Like, so this is the 20-year reunion. I believe there was like a 10-year reunion, or maybe it was a 5-year reunion that General McFarland did attend. Because the unit, the 1st Brigade, 1st Armored Division, Pure, was stationed in Germany. They closed that base down as soon as we got back from that Ramadi deployment. Everybody just kind of went to their next duty station, and no new people came in, and the unit reflagged in El Paso. So the general and his wife had gone to I want to say it was a 5-year reunion, but don't quote me on that. And they had this huge plaque that listed everyone that we lost during that time, all the services.
Yeah.
And that plaque traveled from Germany to Texas. And so it was kind of a recognition of like, hey, this is the unit's history and it's made it all this way. And so that one was like kind of low key. It wasn't a big to do as we're trying to make this one. This is the 20-year reunion. And there are units inside of that brigade that does annual kind of alumni reunions. The 37th Armor, for example, is one that does one. Oh yeah, there's the units right there.
All these guys.
Yeah,
I know. I have to get. Actually, I got this from a friend.
that's cool.
And I have to give it to a scout sniper, who I'm going to be seeing in September.
Cool.
Because he can't find this, so I'm giving it to him.
That's awesome.
And I think we should bring it with us for the reunion. I think that would be cool.
That would be very cool. And I think I got mine, right here on the wall here. That's the print that came out.
Oh yeah.
And I had it framed when I got back to the stateside after Germany, and but that was the official print that an artist was commissioned to put together, and it has, like you can see at the bottom, it has all the unit logos, but there are still a few of those prints left. The artist connected with us as we were talking about the reunion and said, hey, I've still got a few of those here. Here's my link. And I posted that on the Facebook page. And so people, if they were interested, like, I never got one when I was deployed, or I didn't know about these. And so there's still a few of them left.
Yeah. Damn. I can't wait to go. I mean, my wife's coming. I can't wait. She's going to meet all these knuckleheads and, yeah. Hey, she's going to meet you come November 1st, Henry, at the Marine Corps Ball in Nashville,
we're
Tennessee.
excited for that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, what's been the biggest headache trying to put this thing on?
So that, like with any event, but one specifically that's in a place that's, like I said, it's not a hub of travel, and so you're asking people to kind of go out, off the beaten path. We're not going out in the wilderness, but to get to El Paso, the travel there from wherever you are, and the members of this unit and all of the different units that were attached, all of their families in 20 years have spread across the globe, of course. And so you're trying to get people to come, and we understand that the travel is such the big obstacle to overcome. The cost of things now, we try to do certain things to minimize the impact. Like the weekend we pick is a federal holiday weekend. Just things like that. Getting sponsorships and getting donors and sponsors to provide some cash that's like, hey, let's keep this as minimal cost as possible. But like anything, there's a little chicken and egg involved where people will commit when they feel like, hey, I'm going to get something out of this. And in a sense of a reunion, you get out kind of when people show up. And so we have this kind of like do loop stick where it's like, well, I need people to sign up, and people will sign up if they see more people sign up and they know they're going to meet some people that maybe they haven't seen in 20 years. And so we're kind of stuck in that loop of like, please sign up. Let's let everybody know you're coming. We understand you got to work out the travel things, but we really want to understand what to plan for. We're not worried about cost because so many people have ponied up to say, hey, I'll help out with whatever the cost of the event is. That's not a concern, which, most events, that's kind of the main concern. This one is not. It's really about, I need to plan something to make it worthwhile for your journey. And the more heads up I have of like people signing up, the better we can plan something. So, if 100 people show up, we're going to have a great time. If 1,000 people show up, I want to make sure they have a great time. And I want to make sure we've planned accordingly for transportation and food and anything that you would need in January in El Paso.
And how many people? I think you told me the number the other day, but please tell our listeners, how many people have signed up for this now?
Yeah, I checked it. I usually check it 2 or 3 times a week on the Eventbrite kind of dashboard, but with family members and Gold Star families and the service members, we're already looking at around 500 or 600 people are saying they're coming. And so, of course, anything can happen, but we want people, we want the word to get out. Obviously, people that don't know about it, we want them to sign up. Again, the sign up is like $25, but obviously you've got to book some things like the hotel and your airfare or your bus fare or however, if you're convoying with people, you got to figure that out. And we want people to kind of get proactive about that, because here it is almost Labor Day and we're going to blink and it's going to be Christmas and it's going to be reunion time in no time.
Yeah, no, I get you, man. The Ton Tavern up in Philadelphia for November 7th to 11th, they were having the same thing. Like, how are we going to get all these people? And I know one ball is sold out. They've got tickets for another one. They've got a lot of free stuff, parades, whatnot. But it's just like they've been planning this thing for like 8 months now.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be huge. And you've been planning this thing for a long time. Like, I've sent this out to every single one of our brothers that was in Ramadi. Like 3-8, India Page, the 3-8 Page, Weapons, Lima, Kilo, all those guys.
That's awesome.
So hopefully we get to see those guys there.
Yeah, because it's an Army base and because the Pure unit was an Army brigade with Army battalions attached, Marine battalions attached, Naval Surface Warfare units attached, Marine Recon attached, you name it was attached. Yeah. And so getting the word out in the Army circles, because it's an Army 3-star who has a, pretty wide reach. But guys like me that at that time, I think I left Ramadi as a captain. And so my sphere of influence was limited to, the folks that I knew. But we've gotten all of the old battalion commanders involved, and they're reaching down to whoever their company and battery commanders were and who their troop and platoon leaders were, just trying to just spread that as fast as we can. And then, getting whatever NCO corps that is, there's a guy in El Paso right now I think he's an E6 or an E7. He was like an E2 when we were there. And so now here he is looking at, he's got retirement on the horizon, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm still in the service, and which is awesome. So we've got, great connections there, but getting the word out is, especially for any brothers and sisters that we might've lost touch with, like just trying to find them through all this technology, podcasts and, Facebook pages and Twitter, everything, just trying to get the word out so we know people have the opportunity.
Well, after we edit this and it's going to go live, or it's going to drop, and we're going to send it out to as many people as we possibly can. But I'm proud of you, man. It's a huge undertaking, because that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's like 11 units, right? And that plus more. I mean, there's more than 11 units.
Consider all the little tiny things. My spreadsheet, it's huge, and it's MIT teams and BIT teams and PIT teams and all these little things. These little signal, like a little signal platoon that was attached, and an Air Force JTAC group, and we want to encompass all that. And then you add on like the families.
Yeah.
And you got families of the fallen, which, I can't find that person anymore, obviously, but if I can find their mom, their dad, their sister, their child, that would be 20 years old if they had a child born before they left. So, trying to find those people are key to making this a success.
It's amazing.
So that's a pretty neat event. It sure takes a lot of resources and you see a lot of your time to put it together. And so I'm sure everyone will appreciate that.
Myself. Yeah. And we've got so many guys with so many talents. A guy named Ben Sledge is helping with so many things with graphics and internet and all the electrons. And then we've got Amy, who's our kind of a CFO, so to speak. She's handling the bank accounts, and the 37th Armor alumni really stepped up and helped us out and helped us kind of structure everything and make sure we're doing everything so the IRS doesn't call us and get us in trouble. And, so we just had so many people step up with their own talents, civilian talents, to help put this thing together. And so we, definitely could not, it would be just an idea, a napkin, if we didn't have these folks actually like kind of executing some of these talents that they, using these talents that they had. So that's been key, just identifying those people and saying, hey, who has this ability and who will step up, and people are just jumping at the opportunity.
Wow, man. And hey, you had a perfect job in the military because you like the, you were telling me something. You were like the driver for the general, right?
Well, prior to that deployment, I had spent a long time as a platoon leader in the artillery battalion.
That's right.
And as we got deployed, after spending, 12-ish months training a platoon, we transitioned the artillery guys into be motorized rifle company kind of unit. And so we didn't even bring our howitzers with us. We all jumped in Humvees and became this kind of motorized infantry company. So we're trying to relearn a lot of things. We trained up on that. We got to country and just how things happen in a unit. Somebody needs to go to this job, and then we need to move the coconuts around, and all of a sudden the phone, the radio or whatever calls and says, hey, you got to get down to brigade headquarters. And like, whoa, I didn't do something wrong. No, you're going to take this job. You're going to leave your unit, your dudes that you train, and you're going to go hang out with the staff at the headquarters. I'm like, no, like, why? Who did I piss off? But what I grew up a little bit and learned later that things happen for a reason. And so while I did not want to do that, I really wanted to be doing the things that I trained to do leading up to that deployment. But I was doing some work there at the headquarters, like making sure the staff had everything they need to be successful. That the general needed his staff to not be able to pause operations because they didn't have running water in their bathroom, or they didn't have a place to sleep, or they didn't have a working computer or electricity. And so those are the things that I worked around during that deployment, was just keeping the brigade headquarters properly running. And so, but while that was not something I would have picked to do, it got me around the right people, and especially at the time, Colonel McFarland, who took very good care of me, years moving forward. And so I was close to the brigade headquarters, and I could see how they were implementing a lot of these combat operations. And so it taught me a lot, even just being near it, not even being, hardcore in the middle of planning any of the operations, but just being around it. I'm like, man, there's some serious stuff going on here. And especially when you think about integrating all of these components of so many different branches, and the talents of the people running them, and trying to understand how to use those. And, oh, by the way, the enemy gets a vote. And so you're working with that. And so it was very interesting to see it from that perspective, what a, 10,000 person unit in the middle of the desert trying to fix this city and its security situation. It was pretty impressive. And I learned a lot.
I can't even imagine. I mean, I was just a dumb E3, like being told what to do by my squad leader, which I listen sometimes. Right? Right, Sergeant Mendoza?
Yeah. How does that, obviously this is 20 years ago, but how did that affect you? I mean, obviously you had the motivation and the drive to be out, boots on deck, go with the rest of the staff. And then, like you said, all of a sudden they throw the curveball, and all of a sudden you're more in an admin role than anything. How do you think that affected you when you were in theater? Obviously put in your input on things, but way in a totally different way than what you were expecting to be.
No, yeah, it definitely did. I remember the days and the nights kind of early in that transition where I'm like, why? Like, I don't understand. If I was a part of this process, why am I being pulled out of it? While we're, this is the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden, like, now you're gonna go play for another team. Like, oh my gosh,
Right.
why would that happen? And, gosh, I was, 24, 25 back then. And so I had a lot, still growing up a little bit. And I learned as I got older that, things do happen for a reason. God has a plan for your life. However it's going to, let him be in control. I was always that young knucklehead, always like pushing against, no. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I've worked out in my head. This is where I think my career is going to go. And so there was a lot of like weeping and gnashing of teeth early in, like, why am I being pulled into
Nice.
this role that, like, no, I know I can do better than this. But as I got into it and it got around the right people that, I'm sure identified my attitude and said, hey, look, we play the cards we're dealt, and this is our mission, and we got to accomplish it. And then as I paid attention and kind of came down off my arrogant horse and said, okay, these guys can't do what they do unless these guys and gals are doing what they're doing. And there are people that rely on my menial admin like task so that they don't have to worry about it, so they can go do other things. And so as I kind of got into that, I learned to kind of be at peace with what I'm supposed to be doing and support the mission and support the people that are out there. I had to look introspectively and go, man, I can go take a shower at least once a day if I wanted to. Sometimes, things happen, and maybe it's 2 days. But there are dudes out there that get to take a shower once a month. And, you gotta be thinking about that and go, what can I do to make that guy, or, what can I do to make that soldier or Marine or airman, whatever, what can I do here to maybe make his life a little easier so he could get back here, maybe take 2 showers that month, and his whole platoon will appreciate that if
A
he gets
luxury.
2 showers a month. So, little things like that help me to make that like kind of attitude adjustment. But there were times that, the bosses that I worked with allowed me a little bit of leeway. Like I had some peers that were out there running convoys and running patrols. And if it was a easy day or I got all my work done a little early that week, I'd be like, hey boss, can I run out with Lieutenant Schmuckatelli and go on his patrol with him? And then those platoon leaders and things like that, they'd be like, man, I can give one of my NCOs or one of my soldiers a day off if I've got another rifleman in the back of the truck. And so I would work that out, and probably 2 or 3 times a month, I would sneak out on a convoy or patrol just to get out of the wire, just to, contribute any way I could. And that helped me, understand the AO, understand what it looked like out there, understand what their, what their troubles were and their challenges were, and what they were dealing with out there. And when the brigade commander's personal security detail needed something, I had to make sure they had their ammo. I had to make sure they had their fuel. I had to make sure their vehicles were maintained, and that was like one of my roles. And so that there were things that helped me make that transition and get my attitude, get my butt in order. Yeah, get my butt in check. So, and it took the leaders that were dealing with me to, gently smack me in the right direction to say, hey, look, we got a mission to do, and we're going to do it.
Wow.
That's amazing how, even though different branches, individually, your mindset, it's always kind of like the same. You were dealt a different card than what you were supposed to. Me and Richard here, Andrew, were dealt a different card than what we were supposed to. But
Way
the
different.
discipline, the discipline that I guess every branch in the military teaches us is the ultimate goal is the mission, and it doesn't matter if we kicking doors in or we signing papers or we are stocking boxes.
Or
Everything, like you
dispersing,
mentioned, has a
giving out
purpose,
money.
and it's helping the other person. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to learn that for our viewers and listeners out there. Um, everybody wants to see that guy kicking in the doors, right? He's the cool guy. He's the war hero. He's the guy that should take all the credit. And when you're that young, of age, you want that, right? You want that attention to yeah, man, I just got back from Fallujah. I just got back from Ramadi. I was the one kicking indoors. I'm sure you probably heard millions of that stopping. All of us at a young age, that's what we do, right?
Definitely.
We go out there and brag about what we did at the AO, at the OP. No one really takes the time to listen. It's very unfortunate because you have to grow up in order to realize that. But when you're 22, you're 20 years old, and you just literally got back from one of the deadliest city in the world, you don't take the time to appreciate all those different elements that made that happen for you in a safe manner so you can come back home. And it's only
Absolutely.
15,
Good
20 years
point.
later that you run somebody like yourself, um, where you realize that even though you guys might not be, might not have been comeback oriented every day, but everything you did was prepared flawlessly for those people that were out there
Yeah,
kicking in
absolutely.
doors. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
that is so great to hear.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I'll be the first one to tell you, we in the Marine Corps, that's a huge fight between every admin, MOS, and anybody that belongs to the infantry. You know,
Yeah.
it's like I don't know how it is in the army. I would love to know if about that. I mean, for you guys, do you guys separate yourselves that way between the infantry guys and
Yeah.
the admin guys, and you
Yeah.
know?
And
Good question.
it's made me think of how silly my mindset was at the time. But yeah, so in the army back in those days, and I'm sure I know they've changed since, but you had your combat arms, which were infantry armor, uh, aviation, artillery, and engineers. Like those are the people they considered combat arms. You had your combat support, which were those that were in direct support of those folks, and then you have your combat service support, which is like two layers away from the trigger puller. That's like your admin and your finance and your postal clerks. So they had those layers. And Henry, just like you're talking about, like I was coming into these conflicts like 2006. Absolutely, like you're seeing things on TV, you're seeing what people are doing, you're seeing the images that the news is showing you, and that, and of course you're training your unit to get ready for that kind of stuff. And in 2004, when I was in Iraq, the mindset of I was a young butter bar lieutenant then, and the mindset was, here's a group of men. You have your weapon systems. Go do God's work and come back and tell me how it went. And let me know what. Give me a sit rep of what's going on. And that's how
Right.
they treated the leadership. The young leadership is, this is what you need to accomplish. Go do it. Come back and tell me how it went. By the time we're in Ramadi in '06, I laugh about how like you needed like an act of Congress just to take a few people off the fob. Like, well, they would stop you at the gate
Yeah.
and go, man, I need your 20-page op order for these 5 dudes. And like, what are you, dude? I'm going, what are you talking about? I have something to do. Get out of my way. And like, you're not leaving here until you have a safety brief and you check all your ammo. And it's like, wait a minute. I thought we were in combat here. Like, you give me stuff and people, I go make things happen, not I got to spell it out for you before I even leave the gate. And so that was quite a bit of transition. And I remember specifically when I was in artillery school, all the lieutenants that were with me, we all had this mindset because all we knew in our background or from our growing up was Desert Storm. And so we had this mindset that I have to deploy as soon as possible because if I don't, the war will be over in 5 minutes, like Desert Storm was. And
Yep.
I'll be that guy that's
Yep.
missing the combat patch because the Army, we wear the patch on the right sleeve if you've been to a combat zone. So I have to get there as soon as possible because this thing's
That
going to be over
definitely
in
sounds
five
familiar.
minutes. And that was 2003. And here,
Wow.
how long did that go on? How long did the global war on terror go on? And so that
Look.
was silly to have that mindset, but
Yeah.
that's what we were working with. Like, I cannot stand in front of a group, a platoon, a company, a battalion, and be that officer that's slick sleeved. Because how are people going to take you seriously? And lo and behold, it was incredibly rare for people to have a slick sleeve by the time we're coming home from Ramadi. I mean, so many people had deployed by that time within the Army, and so. But yeah, just like you said, Henry, it's a weird mindset to go into like, no, I'm supposed to be the most important person in the room, and no, you're not.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to back the other person.
For us Marines, and Henry can
It's
back me up on this. We look for the combat action ribbon. Like as infantry, we
yeah.
we look for the car. We're like, has this guy actually done any shit? you don't see a car, you're not going to give them that much respect.
So what was the
Well,
I've done that.
requirement to get
I've
it?
done that
Yeah,
many times.
what was the requirement to get that ribbon? Was it just being in that AO?
no,
Or
Henry, will you,
you have
Sergeant
to,
Mendoza, will you take this question, please?
you have to be in theater, and you had to officially be engaged
okay,
on a firefight.
okay,
It doesn't matter if it lasted 5 minutes or if it lasted 3 hours.
okay,
You had to officially be shot at by the enemy or whoever. In that case, in our case, all of us, it was obviously either a Syrian sniper or an Al Qaeda or
yeah,
some sort of
Yeah.
insurgents, right?
yeah,
But that's how it works for us. But to Richard's point, and your point, Austin, it's a mindset that we all share, and it's normally we share stories among Marines, but in your case, you being in the Army, being an officer, has opened up the mindset now that it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, you talk about you wanted to earn that patch because you wanted to show that your service wasn't, you did what you had to do, right? For us, the combat action ribbon, if you joined the Marine Corps or the Army or any other branch right after the War on Terror ended, it doesn't exist. It was non-existent,
right,
right? And it doesn't matter anymore whether you join for the next 20 years, unless there's World War III or
Yeah.
a major conflict. No one's gonna earn a combat action ribbon or a combat patch, right? So for us that were part of that generation, that was the mindset. I'm not going to be the one Marine that spent 12 years in the Marine Corps. That's three enlistments, right? Three contracts. And I'm not going to show that combat action ribbon.
yeah,
And then I'm going to see a John PFC that literally just came in, got deployed, and boom, he's like
He
stacked with
gets it right.
ribbons and medals,
Yeah.
and he's only been in Marine Corps for 2 years. So
yeah,
the mindset definitely plays a big factor. But like you mentioned earlier, and to all the viewers and listeners, God has a perfect plan for everyone.
Amen.
Even if, God forbid, we get into a world conflict, another war on terror, whatever it may be, if you're listening or you're watching this, if you are part of a unit, Marines, Army, Navy, Air Force, do
Space
not
Force.
push to be in a place that you're not supposed to. Just let it ride, man.
Just let it. I
I'm
like
gonna tell
that.
you
Let
myself.
it ride. Yeah.
Um, I was supposed to be in Ramadi with this guy, and shortly after we came back from Fallujah, I had the option to go to Ramadi or just get detached and go to another battalion.
wow,
They gave me that option, and my gut was telling me go,
yeah,
because that will be your fifth deployment
yeah,
and your fifth combat action theater and zone, right? But then
Yeah.
when you look at reality, your mom, your dad, your uncle, everyone in your family is pretty much telling you, don't go, don't go, don't go. Then they put that cloud on your mind, right? Then at that point you start questioning yourself. And I gotta say, maybe you guys agree or don't agree. Once you have any doubt in your mind and you attempt to go to a combat zone, that's when you get hurt.
Agreed.
yeah. You don't you
That's
don't have to
yeah,
rush to that. Your day's
yeah,
going to end one day anyway.
yeah,
And I guess I understand if you feel the call of like, hey, I'm willing to, you know, do the service. I'm willing to put myself in harm's way. But I can look back now as an older person and go, those little symbols, those don't make you a person. Those don't make you a good leader. They were things that we were going to, like, they were kind of crutches. They were going to be a crutch that when I'm talking to when I'm an older officer and I'm talking to a young officer or I'm talking to a soldier, that it was a crutch to lean on to go, you can trust, I know what I'm talking about, look here, as opposed to just being a good leader and taking care of them and them understanding, what the mission needs and you're going to get it done. We leaned on those things. And, we talk about the combat action ribbon. The Army came up with, and I want to say 2005 came out with the combat action badge. Because there were, infantry soldiers had their infantry, expert infantry badge, but they also had the combat infantry badge. And I talked to so many different infantrymen that said those that earned their EIB, they treasure that more than the actual CIB because they had to do something to earn that EIB. The CIB is if a bullet went by their platoon, they all got CIBs. The EIB, though, that was a hard test. That was a hard thing to earn to get to put that on your uniform. And so they would, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I watched as the CAB, the CAB came out, I remember seeing people that would go hunting for it. And they would say, well, I got to have that badge or it doesn't matter. And so they would go outside the wire, they would shoot at some cats and some rubble, and then they would call on the radio like, we're taking fire. And like, dude, that's not how so it was one of those things. The Army tried to create something to give people recognition, and what it ended up doing is causing people to do stupid things that were not combat things. They try to get their badge, and it was quite I was just like shaking my head at this thing. Like, are you kidding me? Like, so those of us that were deployed in 2001, 2, 3, 4 that engaged in those actual things, the CAB didn't come out to 2005, and so it's like, okay. It was just an interesting time in the Army when that thing came out, trying to recognize people, but it was like everybody gets a participation trophy. If a rocket landed on your fob and you were like 600 yards away, hey man, you got attacked. Like, what are we teaching people?
That is such a political thing to handle. And I mean, look. Prior to my enlistment and saying with Richard, there were Marines that were 4, 10, 5, you name it. There was no conflict in the country. So, we come in as young Army soldiers or young Marines, and we come in exactly in a period where we know that the next 4 years of our lives are going to be crunched down into go back home, go to Iraq or Afghanistan. Go back home, go to Iraq or Afghanistan. We kind of knew that, right?
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what these other soldiers or Marines, I mean, put into perspective, a 15-year soldier, what is it the normal, what rank is it? It's the norm to be a chief at that point. E8, E7, somewhere around that time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same in the Marine Corps, right? We have a staff sergeant, a gunnery sergeant who dedicated his life to the Marine Corps from, let's say, right after the Gulf War to like right before the first OIF task force was created. This guy wears his uniform proudly and has nothing to show for it. And then he has to burden the sight of a young E3 who just literally went, from Iraq to Afghanistan to this, and he potentially has a Bronze Star, a NAM, and all these recognitions and medals. And I can only imagine how that was for those guys to see, everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what but you don't realize that when you're a young cat. All you want to do is just, hey, let's go. Until reality sinks in and you get your first, I always say, you have to get your first scare in combat to be humble and not think that way.
Yeah, that's true.
That's when it stops.
Yeah, my platoon that I was training for that second deployment, you had a platoon leader that had deployed and pulled triggers and dropped some big explosive stuff on people, and I had squad leaders that we had both been deployed, in 2004, and now here we are in 2005, getting ready to deploy again. So you got, the platoon leader that thinks he's smarter than everybody, You've got the squad leaders that are a little gristled and like, I seen some stuff, man, back when they were E3s. Well, the in between, the sandwich in between those, I had these platoon sergeants and gunnery sergeants that came straight off the trail, straight from recruiting, straight from Fort Sill, being like instructors. And so they had no deployment experience, but they had a lieutenant that had more combat experience than they did. So how do you manage that when you've got a butter bar, now maybe he's a first lieutenant, and you've got an E7 with 15 plus years? That guy's way more knowledgeable and experienced on the weapon systems, but this young officer's been deployed. You got squad leaders now, they're looking at their platoon sergeant going, well, we called him Smoke. The platoon sergeant was called Smoke. Hey, Smoke, I spent 15 months in Iraq while you were, hanging out at Fort Sill. But that E7, ironically, the young soldiers in that platoon were actually being trained by my platoon sergeant. So it was like they're like, man, I followed this guy. He was my platoon sergeant. He was, my trainer in basic course. And now here he is, my platoon sergeant deployed. And we're going to deploy this guy. And this platoon sergeant I always connecting with, do you remember the black guy from Gladiator?
Yes.
He's much older now, but he's this huge black guy that is just scary to look at. And that's what my platoon sergeant was. And here I was, a little bit scrawnier white kid back then.
What's
and
his
that
name?
Guy kept our
Digimon something
in line.
Guso. Yeah.
And it was so funny to see him tackle exactly what you're talking about, Henry. Like, he had never deployed, but he had to step up and keep those crusty squad leaders in check and keep the fear of God and all those young soldiers. And, I had to make sure that I was managing the relationship between he and I of like, hey, yes, I've seen the sand, but you know how to work with people because you've been doing it for 15 years. And so, that takes a delicate balance of, and he was I remember he was an awesome leader. He was an awesome NCO, and I was extremely lucky that they paired us together. But it's exactly those kind of delicate things you got to play with. And I remember the battalion commander showing up, and he had a bunch of young officers, and he's like, hey, you're the new battalion commander. You've never deployed. We just came back from a deployment with all these same people, and you're the new guy. And so it was tough for those guys for sure.
That is so crazy how that works, man, because we in the infantry in the Marine Corps, we look at lieutenants like, young cats who don't do anything. They just graduated college and, oh, you got a degree. That's the only reason why you're in charge of me. But you, and like you mentioned, you don't, your mindset, it's never on that where it should be, where it's like, okay, this guy went to college. He obviously knows he learned something about managing people, because ultimately that's what Marine and Army officers and any other officers are taught. You guys are kind of like the leadership of you're the bone of that particular squad, platoon, battalion, company, and you train for that mentally, physically. But we tend to have the mindset of, and it's wrong, but it's nature.
Yeah.
Oh man, you just graduated college. You don't know anything. You don't rate to be here. That's what we used to tell our lieutenants. You don't rate to be here, man. You haven't done anything.
Thank God I did not become an officer, because you would be saying that shit about me. Because I went to college, but I enlisted. I was trying to be a Mustang.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough time back in the rear to go to OCS. So they just, I was an E2 twice, E3 twice, E4 once, NJP'd in 2005. And Sergeant Mendoza remembers when I got NJP'd in 2005 for drinking in Iraq.
It's I gotta say, man, it's wonderful to hear this from another person who's been an officer. I've never spoken to another officer like a friend, like a person. I've always had to, well, yes, sir, I, sir. And, so no one ever took the time. And that's where I never understood. I get, in your case, if you don't mind, maybe explaining that to the viewers.
Sure.
How did you were able to separate your character, your persona? You seem like a person who kind of was level-headed at, even 20 years ago. How were you able to separate your leadership role versus the friendly role
Yeah.
with your junior soldiers and everybody else?
Sure.
Good question.
Great question. Again, very blessed that I went the path that I did. Sometimes not by my choice, mostly not by my choice, but I went to school at Texas A&M and went through that ROTC program. That when I was having to make that choice of where am I going to take this Army scholarship, when I did just a little bit of research, this is, pre-smartphone, the internet was a new thing back then. But
Yeah.
I'd asked enough people, and we're talking like late '90s. But I'd asked the right people, and I'd read the right text that said, if you're gonna do something, do it right. And if you're gonna go through an Army ROTC program, the largest Army ROTC program is at Texas A&M. Okay, why is that? Well, they have all this history, and more officers came out of A&M that went to World War I and World War II outside of the service academies. And so here's the largest,
I didn't know that.
and has a prestigious, history to it. So I was like, okay, well, that's where I got to go. I'm from Georgia, Texas. That culture is not that different. I'll be fine. It's not like I'm moving up north to Yankee country or moving to, New York City or California. I'm like, okay, I'm staying in the what my culture was used to. But I feel like that program and the amazing cadre that was there, NCOs, officers, they impressed upon us from like day one, the relationship between a platoon leader and a platoon sergeant. They kind of packaged it all around that. Like, this is what you need to be preparing yourself for, because, and we all left that situation with, I'm only going to have one of these. I'm only going to have the first NCO that works for me. There's only going to be one. I'm going to have plenty of people that work for me forever, but there's only going to be one that's the first. And so you got to get that right. And you never know what that person's going to be like. Are they the crusty guy that's been scarred up and from all this or is he going to be slimy, or is he going to be not confident and the young NCOs push him over? You never know what he's going to be like. So you have to prepare to be able to handle all those situations. And it's like a blessed thing to be that young officer and meet your NCO for the first time and just like, okay, how's this going to work? And how that worked for me with everything I was armed with from college and the program I was in is my first team was a 3-man team, myself, an E6 and an E4. And the E6 and E4 had been in country already for 12 months and just got told you're extended for another 4 months. And then I show up. Hey, I'm the new second lieutenant, and I can't believe I got so lucky to be in combat. And they're looking at me like, I'm going to kill you. Why are you so happy to be here? And I remember that E6 who I could see on his face, he just wanted to be with his family. He was tired of being there. He was trying his best to keep this E4 alive for the rest of the deployment. Like, I get it. And, in the Army, the Marines may be the same, but the NCOs sign for everything, as in all the equipment belongs to that sergeant, to that staff sergeant or sergeant first class. Officers don't sign for anything other than your personal gear. So the truck, the radio, the weapon systems, that NCO is responsible for that. And so he made that very clear on day one, like, sir, this is all mine because I signed for it. And if something goes missing, I'm on the hook. So, and so I remember he said, sir, that radio and that radio and that radio and that radio, because we had a lot of radios, those are all mine. And this gun is mine and this truck is mine. And I said, hey, man, I'm not here to make waves. But I tell you what, after chow tonight, and we're deployed. I said, after chow tonight, when you're supposed to be watching TV or getting on Skype and talking to your family, you are going to be down here training me on all of these radios and training me on that weapon system. And we're going to do it until you feel comfortable that you can say, all right, sir, you can touch my radio now. And we'll just keep going until you're ready. And if you're not ready, we'll just keep going. And he was like, that confused him a little bit. And so about the third hour, as he realized, like, okay, I know what buttons to push. And when things start whizzing by your face and stuff starts blowing up around you, and I can take the M60 apart and put it back together, and you're comfortable that I, the young lieutenant, can do that, then we'll go rest and we'll go have free time. But until that, if this is your truck, I don't want to mess with your truck, but you're going to train me on it. And so I think he took that as all right, this guy's not a complete dip, so I was like, okay. So that really helped me to come at it with that attitude. And that's what they trained me to do, not to show up and go, I'm the officer and I'm in charge, and I know you've been here for
Right.
12 months, but now we're going to do it my way. Man, that's just setting yourself up for failure, you know? And so
Yes.
I tried to come at it a little more humble on the front end and go,
Dude,
man,
that's like Jocko's that's Jocko's philosophy, like right there about leadership.
yeah.
Right there.
And like
Jocko
that,
would be so
I did
proud.
not invent that. I don't, I'm not claiming that. That was impressed upon me
Of
from
course.
senior NCOs that had lived that life for 20 years and said, hey, man,
Yeah.
hey, young snot-nosed lieutenant, when you go meet your first NCO, because what they're not thinking about, hey, let's take care of Austin Maness. They're thinking, let's take care of whatever NCO is going to have to deal with this knucklehead. And so they're impressing that upon us as cadets to go,
Yeah.
do not show up there,
Mm.
you know, and it become like a dick measuring contest on day one. You will find yourself in a bad way. Like, you know, show these NCOs that you mean business, but you know, that you respect their time in service and you respect the hard lessons that they've learned. And so, you know, Henry, when you asked about the, you know, kind of friendship thing, I tried to always put it as to do things like just names. You know, in the Army, I never said, I don't know if I ever said a first name, even to my lieutenant buddies. And it was just a way of just kind of maintaining a little bit of psychological space between, like, you know, I would never call an NCO anything other than, you know, sergeant something, or a platoon sergeant, or smoke, or first sergeant, hey, first, or top. Like, I would never say anything other than that. And I would not expect them to do it. It was weird when I did an Air Force job as an Army officer, and the young NCOs and airmen are calling each other by their first names, and I was like, "Whoa,
Oh,
this is
oh,
strange to me." I mean, that's their world. But I had some young
Yeah.
Air Force NCOs coming to me like, "Hey, Austin, you coming to the thing?" I was like, "Whoa, we are not bro. Why are you?" But this time, I'm like
Yeah.
the crusty captain that's like, you know, tired of, you know, wearing uniform. Like, hey, man, like, do not call me by my first name. We are not bros. Like, we're here to get a mission done. And they were like, oh, why is this guy such
jeez.
an a-hole?
Dude, that guy would have gotten
Well,
slapped in the
the
face if he did that.
generations were changing
Yeah.
too, you know. So we can all relate to that. Even on my time, I had to put some people in check, some boots that literally would just come in, but because they've been to Iraq with me, all of a sudden they felt the need that they can just come to me and say, "Hey, Henry," or "Hey, Mendoza, is your squad ready?" And
Make a face.
you were just like you, right, Austin? You would look at you, just kind of pop your head, and you're like, "Did this guy just said that to me?" And you know, but generations change, and I guess
Yeah.
us. That's when you know that your time is it's slowly passing you by because you start seeing all
Yeah.
these changes, and it's just one of those things, man.
Oh yeah.
I, but I
But no,
thoroughly
it's
enjoyed it.
amazing to know.
I thoroughly enjoyed it by the time
It's
I was a battery commander. And now I have a first sergeant, and I have platoon leaders, and I have platoon sergeant. And so now I have like young officers under me that I'm trying to train them. Like, don't be stupid to your NCOs, because that, you know, they will
yeah.
show
Kick the
you
shit
how
out of
stupid
you.
you are. But you know, I remember talking to those, my first sergeant, my platoon sergeants, and I was like, guys, I've never been an NCO in my life. I don't think you want me to try to do that. But I tell you this, if you don't do your job, then I have to do your job. And if I have to be an NCO and I've never been an NCO, the whole battery's going to suffer. And do you understand what I'm trying to say? And they're like, I think so. I was like, here's a scenario. You don't keep your squad in check, I become your squad leader, and I'm the battery commander. Do you know how terrible that's going to be? How improper and clunky and annoying that's going to be if I'm your squad leader. So let's not ever go down that path. Take care of your job, and then I don't have to do your job. Oh
Mm.
my gosh. And I let my NCOs, I had the most amazing first sergeant when I was a battery commander, and he knew how to keep NCO business, and officer business. And he was so good at it. And I went an entire 12 months of command in Korea, my entire command time, not one, what we call, you know, significant incident. Not one of our soldiers was ever on the blotter report or under any kind of like, you know, you're in Korea, so you like bust curfew or you get in a fight. Zero. And it was all because of those NCOs that we had there and that first sergeant that kept everybody running smooth. And our battery was always, recognized for top this and top that. And it wasn't because of this guy. It was because he knew how to handle that and keep it out of officers' way, and officers stayed out of his way. And it was a wonderful relationship. And he ended up retiring, which I was kind of sad, like towards the end of my time, but I was so grateful that he knew what he was
Glad
doing.
you were never in charge of us because we were a fucking handful. We got in trouble. Like there were NJPs.
Oh
I
man.
mean, even on the Mew, we
Yeah,
had
our lieutenants were not. Yeah,
every port we went to, someone got in trouble. I
yeah.
mean,
Our,
I
lieutenant,
can't.
our lieutenants were not the our lieutenants. We were more headaches than anything to our lieutenants.
Well, I don't know if I'm diming anybody out here, but I will say this, and maybe this is just Austin Maness. Maybe it's every young officer that ever had to be involved in UCMJ action. But I tell you, one of the hardest things I ever did in the military was look a soldier in the face over whatever stupid thing they did. And I had to keep a straight face and do the 2-finger point and act like I was so serious and how dare they dishonor. And you got to keep a straight face. And as soon as they walk out the door, you and the first sergeant are like, oh my God, how did I not die laughing at this? You did what now? You stuck what where? What you cussed out what senior officer? Why would you? And so you're trying to have this like serious conversation. As soon as they leave the room, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe
See,
I
that
got
is
together.
that's the part that I in my case I didn't understand until after later in my career, because obviously I had I had a head a seat on the table at that point, right? So I could sit around, like you said, behind doors and listen to these guys. But when I was a young Marine, I always wondered. I said, dude, I just got the S chewing on my life. These guys told me to leave. I wonder what they're talking about inside. So later on in my career, when I got to sit down with first sergeant, with
Yeah.
company gunny, with the company commander, and discuss this craziness that went on over the weekend about my Marines and all of that. It was so funny, just like you described it. It's like we're just dying laughing about the. So he just went through the gate at 6 in the morning, drunk, fucking missing his shoes or his fucking pants, and it's just like that shit was hilarious, man. So, but man, what a great opportunity to talk with you. Hopefully we do it again one more time. I'm sure you have plenty of stories to share with our
We would
viewers
love to get into
and
your
us. We
stories.
would love to, yeah, because unfortunately for the timing for us, we wanted to focus more on your cause with the reunion and
Yeah.
everything. But maybe you give us the opportunity to maybe do another interview next time to where we can actually focus on your career and let the viewers and
And your
listeners
deployments too,
learn more
yeah.
about you. So
Sure. Yeah. And I was just talking with another, in fact, I think it's Ben and I were talking, Ben Sledge and I, and we were kind of talking about all the drama in the media right now with the special operators that are, hey, turns out their rendition of what happened on the battlefield may have not been exactly true. And is there what do they call it, stolen valor and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, man, that's a really hot topic right now.
That is huge.
And we kind of were discussing like, well, we're trained, especially when it's like lieutenants talking to lieutenants or officers, and we're trained that when we're telling the story that 10% of the story, up to 10% of what you're saying only needs to be true for it to be an effective story. And so like when it's like a fishing story or that time when we were under fire. And so you're telling your buddies these kind of stories. Well, of course, only 10% of it's going to be true because that's how storytelling goes. Well, when you're in front of an audience or a national, whatever, and you say something that comes back to bite you. And so just, our generation learning to be cognizant of what we're saying and like, oh, wait, was that the embellishment or was that the truth? You got to be very careful with that kind of stuff. And so it's just interesting. I appreciate what you guys are doing with these kind of podcasts to try to get some perspective out there and hear from people that were, doing it, which is awesome.
Yeah,
Henry,
yeah. I mean, we want to guide the new generation to actually, take under consideration everything that we did. I mean,
yeah,
we didn't have this guidance 20, 25 years ago. There was no podcast. There was barely internet, right? It was dial-in
Yeah,
internet in my
you
age
had
when
those
I joined.
digital cameras
You
back
know,
then.
that was a new
yeah,
thing. Yeah,
you know, like to me, I didn't even have that. Like when I was in Fallujah, we were still using the Kodiaks, the
Yep,
disposables,
yep,
and we had to take them to you put them in a Ziploc bag, make sure they don't get destroyed, and put them on your sea bag. When you got back stateside, take them
that's
to a
right.
CVS,
yep,
get them developed, and that's when you got to see your first pictures, whether they were right or wrong. But.
Yeah,
So our goal is to definitely, hopefully, the new generation of soldiers and Marines and Army and
airmen and
right.
Navy
Navy
and
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 sailors and all
and
those
Air Force,
guys.
whatever, they can listen to us, to the different people on the platform, and learn from it. It's kind of like what to expect if I do join and
Hmm.
we ever encounter another
Yeah,
world conflict or something like that.
Yeah,
We didn't have that, so we just learned on the
yeah,
fly and had to grow up ourselves. No one sat there I wish I would have had someone that says, "Look, when you go to Iraq, this is what you're going to face mentally. So you might want to do A, B, C, D, E."
yeah.
yep.
We were just like,
I
"I'm
know.
gonna do
I
Z
know. I
first,
didn't
and
have
then
that.
figure out the rest."
I got my ass
So
chewed
we
a
want to thank you
lot.
for that.
No, I
But
appreciate that, and
Oh
Austin,
yeah, he
thank you,
did,
man.
man.
yeah,
This guy was one of those Marines that kind of like your soldiers. He was a little kind of
I
like
was a
a
shit bag my
troublemaker,
first
one of
deployment.
those. So we have to bend him into shape. But I knew he was gonna be great once he got to be on his own, and lo and behold, Ramadi made him who he is
Hey,
today, and
Ramadi,
you know,
dude, that place
so
that place grew me up
yeah,
like real quick. I should have
yeah.
died like 4 times.
Well, and that's
yeah,
my first deployment
well,
was I spent time in Baghdad and Najaf, and like I said, those were the days where
It's
they
yeah,
gave you some bullets and some gear and some people and said,
damn,
"Go do God's work." And so yeah,
yeah.
I'll save that for another day. But I mean, we're
yeah.
talking as a young artillery guy, calling for fire, blowing stuff up, utilizing an AC-130 gunship on an objective, talking to
Like
Kiowa
Lorraine.
helicopters while we're chasing bad guy. I mean, all that fun stuff. And it was 20 something years ago. And now I'm trying to think like, oh my gosh, but how am I sitting here
Yeah,
today,
time flies.
old
Yeah,
and
me
fat and
too.
bristly
Yeah,
faced? Like it's
Hey,
incredible.
yeah,
the
man. I'm
beard.
telling you, it
Hey,
goes
the
by
beard
fast.
looks
That's
good,
why.
man.
Yeah, absolutely.
He does look like
He looks
Lieutenant
like Pickard, doesn't he?
Picard. Yeah.
He looks like
At
Lieutenant.
first, I thought
And
when
and
the
our
video first
lieutenant,
came up, I was like,
he went to school
"We
in
gotta show you
Texas.
we gotta show you a picture of him."
Oh, please do.
I will.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we're
I'll
gonna
send you
give
one.
you the before and after. We're gonna
Yeah,
give you 20 years ago, and then we're gonna give him to you now.
That's
that's right.
awesome. That's awesome.
Great
Well,
guy,
Austin,
though,
thank
man.
you.
That guy was down to earth, but
But Austin, thank you, man. Thank you for taking the time. Henry, obviously, it's always good to see you. I'll see you Friday.
yes,
If you
sir.
guys could just hang on for a second after this stops because we gotta download it.
Yeah.
But see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.
Hey,
See you.
great pleasure meeting you, Austin. Thank you again.
Thanks,
See you
Henry.
guys.